All right, so in today's exercise, we're going to learn all about tables, just a beginner crash course on tables, just to be able to get a table up and running. And we'll do a couple of swipe characteristics associated with the table, just try to learn how to swipe left and swipe right to perform some actions. So first thing, here's the end product. So you have like our home page, MKD2 character selector, you hit begin. These are all 8 characters from Munkee Kissin Dunkee 2. Click on it, nothing really happens. So other than just be able to click on it, the next exercise we do will essentially have clickability to do stuff. So right now we just want to get a table up and running to display. Hit back, we go back to our home page. So that's our final product for today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a new project. So NX code new project. It'll be iOS single view app. And then we're going to call this Swift Tables 1 and give it a home. Alright, so this will be a 2-page app. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new view controller. So I'm going to right click and say new file and iOS Cocoa Touch class. And I'm just going to call it character view controller and give it a home. So now we have our second page. So let's focus on the storyboards. So first thing we'll do is launch screen.storyboard, put the little label that says loading. Alright, and we'll center it, we'll just say loading. Alright, and we'll focus in main storyboard on getting our 2 pages up and running. So we have our home page there, we'll just drag over another label. Just gonna put a label there, and label will say MKD2, so Munkee Kissin Dunkee 2 character selector. So I can choose your character, and we'll just put a button at the bottom. And button will just say begin. Alright, so we have our first page up and running, it's done. Now the next step is to get the second page. So we're just going to drag over a regular view controller. Now with the table you have the option of doing table view controller, and that's perfectly fine as well. It'll pre-configure the table for you, and even if when we said file, new file, we could have just chosen UITableViewController as the parent object. It would have auto-generated the methods needed. But I want to go with a very basic approach, just showing you how you can build a table from scratch with just a regular view controller. That's the goal here. So yes, you could use a UITableViewController, but we're going to choose regular view controller, UIViewController to do this, so that you see all the intricacies and all the little things needed to do this. So we got a regular view controller. First thing we'll do is we'll subclass it. So choosing the identity inspector, we'll subclass it to character view controller. All right, and then from there, what we can do is we can connect the begin button to this new view controller, so we can create our segue. So mousing over it, click on begin, hit the control key, click, and drag, and choose present modally. So now we have our begin button segueing to our new page, character view controller. So nothing new so far. It's just been all things we've learned in past modules and past videos together. Now we're going to focus on the table. So let's add a nav bar and a back button just to finish off the basics that we need. So we'll look for a navigation bar. And I'll change the title to be MKD2 characters. And we'll choose a bar button item. For our back button, change the word item to the word back. Alright, so now we have our back button. We're just missing the unwind method in our viewControl.swift, which we'll add afterwards. But for now, we have the basics that have been done in past videos already. So now the trick is to getting our table into this storyboard. So we're going to type the word table. And there's three tables that come up. So table view controller, we could have done this, and this would have auto-generated everything for us. Could do table view cell. That'll be the next video. We're going to do customized table cells. Right now, we're just doing a generic table cell, generic look and feel. So we're just going to choose the table view. We're going to drag it and spread it out. All right, so we got our table view. All right, now we could click and run just to see what happens. So I'm going to choose an iPhone 8. They're loading, hit begin. So we have an empty table here. You should see like blank lines, blank empty cells. And you'll notice the thickness of cells, that looks like about 50, maybe 40 to 50 pixels, most likely 50 pixels in thickness. So we're gonna be, I mentioned that for a special reason because we're gonna be doing something with that in a moment. So back button doesn't work, of course. Now, before we continue back to the code, one thing to note, and this is a similar thing to the text field, the UI text field we dealt with in a past video, where we have to connect the delegates to the yellow circle. So clicking on the table view, switching over to Connections Inspector, we have these two items, data source and delegate. We're going to connect both of these to the yellow circle. So I'm going to click on data source. I'm going to drag it to the yellow circle, and click on delegate, or just mouse over delegate, plus sign, drag over the yellow circle. Now watch what happens when you run it again. So hit begin, and as expected, you get an app crash. So let's scroll to the top of this sea of death here and see what we have. So it says here, table view, number of rows in section, unrecognized selectors sent to instance XYZ ABC, right? So in a nutshell, it's basically saying it's missing this method called number of rows in section, right? This is the method it's looking for. And I point this out for a particular reason because it isn't enough to just do everything in Storyboard for tables. You have to actually write support code in your view controller to support displaying data on the table. And that's our next job now. So we're going to move over to our view controllers and write some code there. Before we go to the character viewcontroller.swift file, I just want to jump into viewcontroller.swift and do a little bit of housekeeping. So we need to add that unwind segue method. So we'll just say IB action func unwind to home view controller, with sender being UI storyboard segue. All right, so this is just all material that we've done already in past videos. Now from here on in, other than the table being dragged in a moment ago, we are putting in new content from here on in. So let's switch over to character view controller and start working. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bring in a couple of delegates. So we have here class, character view controller, extends UI view controller, comma. We're going to need a couple of them. We're going to need UI table view data source, and we're also going to need, so comma, UI table view delegate. So we need UI table view data source and UI table view delegate. Now this is going to complain, and it's going to actually offer a fix. It's saying we're missing these support methods in a nutshell. We're missing some support methods to support the operation here. It's saying, do you want to add these protocol stubs? You could click on fix. It'll auto-generate the methods that we need, the bare minimum methods we need to get up and running. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually walk you through each individual method one by one and generate them myself. Now, typically with a table, what we want to do is we want to have some sort of data source to supply data to the table. Typically, it could be from SQLite, which will be in a video coming up very shortly, or it could be from a remote database, which is further along in the set of videos that I have. We could put the link below in the YouTube comments, and or you could find it on my YouTube channel. but you could do either remote JSON parsing uh, or just from a SQLite database, or you can hard code the information. So we're going to hard code the information today just for time's sake, because our focus is basically just getting a table up and running. So I'm going to create an array. So I'm going to say var list data extends array of string. I could have done a let, but I decided to choose a var this time. No particular reason. Make it empty. Let's do it inside viewDidLoad. Let's actually populate our data inside viewDidLoad. So what we're going to do is we're going to say list data equals, open the array, and we'll put in my 8 characters from Munkee Kissin Dunkee 2, available on the App Store. So Munkee, Dunkee, Llama, Yoti, Yina, Walla, Hita, and Ion. So the 8 characters from Munkee Kissin Dunkee 2 are now in my my data source for this exercise here. So we're going to display all 8 characters in our table view. So got the first thing out of the way. We've got our characters listed out. Now there are technically two methods you need bare minimum to get things up and running and happy. I'm going to say that there are 3. And there's actually 4. You're going to see in the next exercise, next video that we do, I'm actually going to say there are 4 support methods we need to get things up and running. So the 2 bare bones methods we need are, how many cells are there in the table view? And the second bare bones method we need is what does each cell look like in the table view? So those 2 methods are minimum. The extra method, which is not required, but I'm saying is needed, is how thick is each cell going to be? Because you could have different varying heights for your cell, and you want to make sure that all the content fits into your cell without overlap. So I'm going to say there are 3 methods for this exercise that you need to get up and running. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add that first method I talked about. So I'm going to say number of rows. Now before I even finish that, let's go back a bit. Number of sections. This is an interesting one. This also gets auto-generated if I was to click on fix up above. This method, it's for saying how many table views do I have on screen. I could potentially have more than 1 table view. But I'm only going to have 1 in this case, and most of the time you're only going to have 1. So the default is actually returning 1. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to skip ahead to number of rows in section. And this method basically specifies how many rows are there going to be in my table view. And I'm just going to return back the length of the array. So I'm going to just return listData.count. So that's the length of my array. All right, that's going to be how many cells there are in the table view. So now let's do the next method that I want to bring up, which is how thick is each cell going to be. So that one is height for row. Now be careful. You could actually accidentally get estimated height for row index path. This is you have to be very careful of this, because what could happen is if this could auto-generate, auto-complete, and nothing will happen. You won't get your thickness. This method won't work for what we're trying to do right now. We need height for row at. This will execute and fire and say that we're going to hard code our height to be a specific value. I'm going to hard code it to 60 pixels. Now, of course, you want to, depending on your design, you'll want to go with something else. And then you'll also want to check for, am I using an iPad or an iPhone? Maybe using UI user interface idiom, which we talked about in a past video. So I'm just going to return 60 pixels. All right. So I've got number of rows in section, which basically is saying how many rows am I going to have in the table view. Height for row at is saying how thick is each cell going to be. We're going to hard code to 60 pixels just for our exercise here today. Now, the third method we need is what does each cell look like? So we're going to say cell for row at. This method, cell for row at, is the method needed to tell what each cell is going to look like. Now the interesting thing is that the first 2 methods, they're executed upon loading the table onto the screen. This third method is executed over and over and over and over again. And it's executed in 2 scenarios. The first scenario being that it could be just brand new table being launched, so someone just loading the screen onto their phone. And so we're instantiating a bunch of table cells to display on the screen. The other scenario is that we could be swiping up and down, and a cell could be leaving the screen, and it needs to be repopulated or repurposed with new data and then put back on the screen, which is the second scenario. Now, we're going to write code to assume the second scenario first, and if it happens to be incorrect, we'll end up with a nil table cell, which we'll have to instantiate. So there are 4 steps in total to getting your table cell to display at this point. First, check for that which scenario we're dealing with. If it's the first scenario where we're instantiating brand new cells, then we want to instantiate a new cell. And then we're going to populate our cell, configure it, and then return it back to the caller of this method, which is done internally. So first step we're going to do is check to see if a cell is leaving the screen. So we're going to say let table cell equal table view dot dequeue reusable cell with identifier. Now I'm going to hard code a string here. So the reason why we have this identifier is because you could potentially have more than one style of table cell in your table, or even within multiple table views. If you had 2 tables on the screen, you're still just using the same set of methods. You're not duplicating these methods in the same view controller. You're just going to say, like, if table view 1, then do this, else if table view 2, do that, and so on. But we have to provide an identifier to our cell. Since we're just dealing with generic cells, we're going to set this string to just be the word cell. So we're just going to have one generic cell to work with. Now, what happens is that this will return a table cell that's leaving the screen if it's that scenario where we swiped away and a cell should be leaving the screen. If it's a scenario where there's still more cells that can be put onto the screen, it'll return nil, basically saying, hey, no, we've still got more cells to return. So then we want to instantiate it. Well, the beauty of Swift is that if I do the double question mark, it says that whatever is on the left side of the statement, if it happens to be nil, then we're going to use whatever's on the right side of the statement as going to be being set to table cell. So double question mark, and then instantiate a brand new UITableViewCell. So with this one line of code, you've basically replaced 3 lines or 4 lines in Objective-C, because you would have just said if table cell equals nil, then instantiate saying table cell equals UITableViewCell. So you've saved yourself a few extra lines of code. So with this line of code here, you basically, in a nutshell, got your table cell, either brand new or one to be repurposed. So now I need to know what or what index am I dealing with in the array, and also what row number am I dealing with in the table cell. Well, there's an argument that's passed into most methods called index path, and you'll see it just above there for height for row at, and you'll see it in future methods that I bring up as well. Index path basically has the row number in question that I'm dealing with. So I'm going to use the index path variable to get that row number that I want to deal with. So I'm going to say let row num equal index path dot row. So there's an int value called row that has the real row number there. So now, in a nutshell, I have the row number I'm dealing with. I have the table cell. Let's go ahead and populate the table cell. So we're going to say table cell dot text label. Now I should mention that a generic table cell has a basic UI label called text label, and we're going to use that. So we're going to say dot text label dot text is equal to, and our array is called list data, so list data of row num. Now we should get a complaint, but nothing major. Just saying, hey, our UI label has an optional. Let's insert a question mark just to make it happy. So now we've populated the table cell with some data. We could just say return table cell and be done with it. But let's add a little bit more to it. So let's change the font first. So we'll say it's a standard, it's probably like a 14 or 17 font that you're going to see by just running this. So we'll say table cell dot text label question mark dot font is equal to, let's change the font here. So we'll just use a standard system font. We'll use a size 50 font. We'll make it bold. So we'll say UI font dot system font of size, and we'll say 50. We'll set the weight to be dot bold. Now, there is a method already called bold system font of size we could have used as well, and it will be just perfectly fine. Either way, both work. So first thing we're going to do is increase the font here. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little indicator on the right-hand side of the cell. So there's this thing called the accessory that you can add to the right-hand side. You've probably seen like little arrows to indicate that, hey, click to do more, or maybe a check mark or a little information icon like a little letter I. Extra things you could put on your table cell to give the user an indication to click on the cell to do more. So we're going to say table cell dot accessory type is equal to dot disclosure indicator. Before I actually finish that, let's see what the options are. So we have check mark, detail button, detail disclosure indicator, or the default, which is none. So I'm going to choose disclosure indicator just to show you what appears. Okay, let's give it a run. Alright, so we hit begin, and we have our 8 characters from Munkee Kissin Dunkee 2. So we choose any one of them. Right now it doesn't do anything. In the next step, we'll get it to do something. Alright, so now the next step is to get our table cells editable. Now, we have this ability to swipe left and swipe right to get buttons to appear. And in fact, let's go back to the original demo of this app, and let's see what I'm talking about here. So we got that up. We'll hit begin. Now if I swipe right, we have 3 buttons: more, favorite, and share. We're going to implement those. If I click on share, we'll have a little simple print statement that says, like share button tap. So we're just going to do like simple print statements for this, nothing major. If I swipe left, we're going to have the modify button. Of course, the colors don't sort of line up with the severity of the requests we're making, but just to illustrate, different colors can be added. Click on modify and make it go away, and a message like modify button tapped will appear. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add some more methods to support these particular actions. The first thing we want to do is tell the view controller that we want our table to be editable, meaning we can swipe left and right. So I'm just going to move up here, and I'm going to create a new method. And so I'm going to type in a method called can edit row at, and that's the one I want. Notice that it has an index path variable here. I don't need it. It's returning a bool, meaning indicating it just wants to be able to say, yes, this is editable, or no, this is not editable. By default, it's not editable, so we're going to change this to be return true to say, yeah, we want to be able to swipe our cells and do stuff with it. So I'm going to start with the swiping right. So swiping from the right-hand side. So we're going to see our buttons on the right-hand side is what we're trying to get at. For that, there is a method called edit actions for row at. Its return type is an array of UITableView row actions. So we're going to create 3 buttons here, each of them of type UITableView row action. We'll append an event handler code into each button, and we'll set it up as an array to return back. Right? And we'll also specify the color that each button is going to be. So first thing we'll do is specify our more button. We'll say let more equal UITableView row action. Right? So we'll say style, and so there's only one method stub here that we need. The first argument is, what type of button are we dealing with? We'll just say dot normal for this. Title, so what text do I want to appear? I'll just put the word more. Handler, well, it kind of tells you the type of method stub it needs to embed into the block code that we're going to put in. So let's get tab, I'm going to clear it, and I'm going to add some spacing here so it's easier to read. I'm going to put opening curly, closing curly, right? And then in my opening curly, the two arguments that are going to be passed in are action and index. Now the name of the argument does not matter, just the fact that we have arguments, so in this case 2 arguments that are passed in. So we're going to say action comma index in, and we're just going to do a simple print statement. I'm just going to say print more button tapped. Just proof of concept that this button actually worked. Now I'm going to change the background color of this button so it stands out. So I'm going to say more dot background color equals dot light gray. Alright, so that's the first button we're going to bring in. Now the next button we're going to have is our favorite. We're going to say favorite on it. So we'll say let favorite equal, again, UITableViewRowAction, same method stub. So it'll be a dot normal again. This title string will be favorite. And handler, add some extra space, opening curly, closing curly. Same arguments passed in, so action and index in. And we'll say print. And we'll say favorite button tapped. Alright, so we got our more button. We got our favorite button. Let's just change the color for favorite. We'll say that favorite dot background color equals dot orange. Alright, third button we're going to add will be share. So we'll say let share equal, again, UITableViewRowAction. We'll say that it's dot normal again. Title, we'll just say the word share. And again, handler, same thing, we'll add extra spaces, open those curlies. Put the arguments as action, index, in. And now we'll just put that print statement share button tapped. So print share button tapped. Alright, so now we just have to change the background color to stand out. So we'll say share dot background color is equal to dot blue. Alright, so we've got our background to be blue here. Alright, almost there. Now all we have to do is bundle these 3 actions into an array and return that back. So we're going to say return, and we'll put share, favorite, and more into an array. Now we have enough to run. So you can go ahead, you can give it a run. And let's see that right swiping action. Okay, we'll hit begin. So for monkey, swipe. We've got more button tapped. But for llama, I'm going to swipe right. Oh, actually, be careful. If you swipe too far over, it'll automatically execute that third button. So share button tapped. So do it gently just to see if we can, well, it keeps executing the share button. I think it's just super hypersensitive on my part. There we go. Click on favorite. There, favorite button tapped, and we know that share button tap works, but I'll see if I can prove it to you with a click. So there you go, share button tapped. And then maybe with Hita, just one more of the more. And so we got all 3 buttons up and running. And you got different colors associated with each of the characters. Alright, so we've got the right swipe action going. Let's do the left swipe action. So our last thing to do for this exercise is the left swipe action. So we're going to add a new method here. This method, interestingly enough, so the work we have to do for the right swipe is totally different from the work we have to do for the left swipe. And you'll see the code varies quite a bit. The interesting thing that I've found in my research is that you can do the same work for the left swipe action as the right swipe action, but the work we did for the right swipe action you cannot duplicate for the left swipe action. So we have to bring in a new method to do the left swipe action in this case. So we're going to say leading swipe actions configuration for row at index path, as if it couldn't get any longer. Now, if you think that names are longer in Swift, you have not seen Objective-C. So this is easy to work with. I don't complain about this at all. All right, so we're going to take a similar approach. We're going to create an action. It's called of type UI contextual action. We're going to call it modify action. That's going to be our for our modify button. So we'll say let modify action equal UI contextual action. It's going to have a method stub similar to what we saw above. We're going to say dot normal. We're going to say the title is modify. And our handler, we're going to do the same thing again, but we have slightly different arguments to pass in. So I'm opening my curlies. This time I'm going to say AC for action, view for view, and success for our success object. And we'll say in. I'm just going to do a print statement. So I'm going to say print modify button tapped. But what's different here is that I have to add in this extra line of code to get things to go away. So I'll say success true. All right. So this is also needed. Now let's change the background color to be red. So we'll say modify action dot background color is equal to dot red. And then finally, we need to return this back. We need to return this back as a UI swipe actions configuration object. So we have to instantiate that and pass. So here this differs from the last method. We can't just return an array. We have to return an object called UI swipe actions configuration. And within that object that we instantiate, we're going to put our array inside of it. So we're going to say return UI swipe actions configuration. Its method stub action. So this is our array. So we will put in our array of options here. We only have one option, modify action, so we'll just make an array of one. So we'll say open the array and say modify action. There. And that's enough for you to run and get your left swipe action up and running. So we're just going to hit run. Hit begin. So now I'm going to swipe left. There's modify. I click on modify. And there's modify button tapped. Let's see if I swipe all the way. Modify button tapped executes again. All right, so this was your crash course on tables, just a beginner's outlook on how to get a table up and running. The main thing we looked at was, well, we recapped how to do page segues and multi-page apps, but we also figured out how a table works. Then we learned about the support methods that are needed to get a table up and running. And then we also looked at swiping actions. We looked at right swiping versus left swiping to be able to get actions to occur on a particular table cell. So now what we're going to do in our next exercise, we're going to take this app again, but we're going to customize each cell. We're not going to have a generic, large line of text. We're going to have something more cultured, more nicer to work with. And we're also going to learn what to do when you click on a cell, which we haven't covered yet. Also note that the characters are from Munkee Kissin Dunkee 2, available on the App Store, so please do take a download, enjoy, and play it as well to support our efforts here so we can continue to create more videos and create more games for you as well. Until next time, take care and keep coding.